What up, what up, what up? So check this out. Are you a fan of Drake's music? Do you think he's in a midlife crisis? A lot of people have that love and hate relationship with him and everything, but we're about to see what's going on with this, know what I mean? Let's get into it, alright? Let's go.
This is my issue with Drake. This is like he rapping for the children. And that's my, yo dog, I had to look up how old this was when I finished listening to the album. You are 36. Your birthday is in 20 days. I Googled that too. You only 37 years old. Get the away from some of these younger and stop these 25-year-olds.
He might have found himself tied with Michael Jackson for the
Do you think Joe Budden is hating or what?
most #1 hits by a male solo artist, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Drake is firing on all cylinders. At a time which should have represented his ultimate triumph, he's wrestling with an identity crisis that's been going on for the better part of the last 5 years. Faced with accusations of phoning it in, Drake's latest album, For All the Dogs, is among the worst reviewed of his career, leaving both fans and critics feeling shortchanged by its lengthy runtime and filler tracks. Sprinkling in a couple of genuinely great, maturely crafted tracks with a whole array of songs that should have never been conceived nor taken out of the studio, this isn't the first time that a Drake album has felt less like a body of work than it is just a glorified playlist. Left deflated following a PR campaign that had promised the return of the old Drake, he's probably amassed more ill will from the fans right now than at any point in his career. Not only because of the record's shortcomings, but because of how he's handled the criticism too. His 14th project in 14 years, Drake's For All the Dogs, performed in the way that you'd expect to begin with. Over 400,000 in first week sales and an immediate beeline for the top of the charts. While this proved that people are still checking for Drake, they aren't necessarily still sticking around or liking what they hear. Because these days, what's on offer is just an imitation of his finest work. Drake sounds disjointed and meandering on For All the Dogs, wrote The Ringer in a scathing review. Chemistry is often an afterthought. At his peak, there was a symbolic relationship between Drake's primary collaborators, Lil Wayne, Party Next Door, Rick Ross, Rihanna. In contrast, the majority of features on FATD operate as surefire streaming bets. Feeling like it was produced by a focus group rather than with a vision in mind, Drake is now struggling to find out who he is as a 37-year-old MC, and it isn't going unnoticed.
He rapping for the children. Get the away from some of these younger. Like with Cole, he used to rap about kid shit. I'm a grown like real Jersey City. And then he started to grow up. And then the rapping sounded like an adult rapping. I'm want to hear adult Drake rapping for adult people. Go find some your age. Hang out with them. Get some of that sauce.
Left in limbo between one generation and the next, Drake has long since let go of any desire to cater to hip-hop as his core audience. Instead, it's all about getting those streaming numbers on a global scale. And although this has been an ongoing process, there's a real sense that it's coming to a head now. As to why he's in this position where he's the biggest rapper in the game, but also distancing himself from the genre that he began in, it all comes down to the fact that he was rejected by hip-hop, and as a result, is now rejecting the genre itself. During a recent show at the Apollo Theater, Drake spoke out about his early attempts to enter hip-hop. I came here with my uncle trying to get signed, you know? I think I sat in front of everybody for like a week straight, and I got turned down by everyone for like a week straight, he told the crowd. In all fairness, my outfit choices were horrible at the time. They said I look corny. I don't disagree. The point is, I didn't get signed that first trip to New York. I went back home and I had to go back to my mom's basement because it didn't play out like the way I thought it would. So I went back and I wrote some more songs to see if I can get signed, and eventually, somebody called. Clearly, this is something that he's been harboring for a long time, and returning to the scene of that rejection brought it all to the surface. Crazy as it is to imagine now, Drake was routinely overlooked in his early career, being seen by tastemakers of the time as too soft to survive.
I passed on Drake. You know, it was Drake before the beard, barefaced Drake. It just hadn't caught all the way up yet. And that type of music, that sound of music, the emo sound, that wasn't necessarily prevalent at the time. I just couldn't see the curves. That one got by me.
On top of his entryway to the game being
I don't see Drake probably would have been successful with T.I., to be honest.
blocked, Drake also faced being denied entry to positions that he wanted to be in. As Fat Joe tells it, Drizzy begged to get on All the Way Up, only to be told no.
3 times, middle of the night, send me the instrumental, send me the instrumental, send me the instrumental. I wish I would have got Drake on there, right? But the fact of all the history of me and Jay-Z, I was like, it gotta be just me and Jay-Z. And this is the last time Drake ever asked me to do a song. Drake gotta forgive me, huh? I'm like, damn, man, please, throw me a Frisbee.
Back then, it clearly wasn't seen as historic significance to get Drake on there. From then on, he's written off any notion of appealing to that crowd, leaving people like Fat Joe and T.I. wondering what could have been. But rather than letting it go, there's a sense that over time, he's turned spiteful as his success eclipsed theirs. Instead, he's given his energy to another crowd that's always been there.
Yeah, at one point it did clearly hurt Drake that he wasn't being taken seriously by those types. However, he ended up reaching a point of popularity to where you couldn't ignore him in his numbers anymore. And these types of dudes, he essentially outlasted them, outcharted them. Now he's in a position where their opinion doesn't really matter anymore. Joe Budden's generation of rap, you guys already rejected him. You threw him in the trash. Now that he's pushing 40, he's not going to suddenly turn around and start seeking validation from you guys. A lot of these younger dudes that Drake is collaborating with now, these are guys who are, artistically speaking, like his children. You can't really blame the guy for collaborating with artists who are directly inspired by him. They took him seriously first.
Logically, this
Yeah, see, I think he's collaborating with all these young people just to keep himself relevant and to get those audience also. Because a lot of the old rappers, if you're not relevant or doing songs with the hot new artists, people not checking for you. So I see why he's doing collabs with all these new up-and-coming artists and stuff.
This makes sense. Drake doesn't need hip-hop's approval at this point. He already has accolades that far exceed what most people could ever dream of. The only problem is that, deep down, he still cares. And by the looks of his newfound defensiveness, all the money in the world isn't filling the hole that comes from creating work that, deep down, in his heart of hearts, he knows isn't it. Just look at what went down with Charlamagne and Joe Budden recently.
Drake put out a song last Friday and nobody cared. The Drake and SZA record. It came out last Friday.
By this point, Drake hadn't responded to Charlamagne's hate as he'd clearly used it as a comedic device for years. After all, this is the same guy who once said that there are 3 sexual orientations: gay, straight, and Drake. Still, Drake went out of his way to engage in a war of words with him. "Are you okay, Leonard? You kinda wearing me out, G," he wrote on IG. Like, you're really obsessed with me for years. Like, you look in the mirror and wish you saw my reflection type. Labeling him an off-brand Morris Chestnut and a goof whose 435 loyal fans will stand by you, Drake acted as if Charlamagne was out of line and did the most petty thing he could, flexed how much more successful he was. The only problem was that, in some ways, Charlamagne was right. Slime You Out may have debuted at number 1, but it fell out of the top 10 in just its second week. Next, there was the whole Joe Budden situation. As alluded to earlier, Joe Budden has some criticisms of For All the Dogs, but also acknowledged that he liked the record overall. In spite of this, and taking into account Drake's current mindset, meant that he focused on the negative, and alongside labeling Joe a failure in music. You left music behind to do what you were doing in this clip because this is what actually pays your bills. You switched careers because the things that pop in your brain had you broke living check to check. And the raps you write had 450 men showing up to your shows in Dusty and Nietzsche jeans to screw up their face to Mood Music 29 and pretend you were the GOAT. If you need to put it in simpler terms, Drizzy concluded, I own a 767. He owns a modest house in the 973 and flies first class on special occasions. Once again, Drake enlisted the I make more money than you argument. And in a culture like hip-hop, going out of his way to do that will do the opposite of making people think that you don't care. Even to a Drake stan like academics, this represented dangerous territory.
He's more staying away from hip-hop media, and I've only heard him say disrespectful or dissing people who might be in hip-hop media. I think Drake is at the point where I don't think he gives a about what someone in hip-hop might say about his album, which I think that's a scary place to be. It's the first time I've ever seen Drake seemingly defensive, whether it's Charlamagne saying something. I've never seen a defensive Drake. I've seen him put the music out and he always let the music talk.
Suddenly firing back against hip-hop at an age where it'd be assumed that he'd embrace it, Drake instead keeps trying to appeal to the kids. Leaving hip-hop behind, he's finding allies and streamers instead, shouting out the likes of Kai Cenat and Aiden Ross on his records. But is this organic, or just another concerted effort to keep creating new fans by engaging with younger demographics? Well,
that is what he doing. He being smart for him to he is being smart for he can stay relevant nowadays. Link up with all the streamers, get all the young people knowing who Drake is and why he's dope and all that. He's doing what he's doing.
Rather than being new, it's actually a formula that he's enlisted before. A few years back, he popped up on a stream with Ninja, breaking Twitch records in the process. After that, the relationship was never nurtured much further. And over time, Ninja saw through it for the cynical move that it was.
I feel like Drake saw that I was up and coming in the gaming scene and he thought it would be a perfect way to just tap into another source of viewers by playing with me. He also might have just wanted a game. I'm not sure.
So too Bobby Altoff, by the looks of it, who got a major cosign from a podcast with Drake before deleting the episode when the relationship soured. As he continues to push himself further into this zone, it's obvious that the music is suffering too. By now, the days of hoping for another record like Take Care or Nothing Was the Same are long gone. Because, as opposed to trying to deliver something critically acclaimed anymore, he's simply trying to deliver something current that'll keep his position as a commercial star solidified. Then, as we've seen, he lashes out because he knows that he isn't giving it his all. The whole fallout from For All the Dogs has created an issue of perception for Drake, because now he's increasingly viewed as an overgrown man-child while his peers are leveling up. Nowadays, Cole and Kendrick aren't striving to be seen as cool. Any relationships that they have with younger artists are based on mutual respect, business, or in the case of Kenny and Keem, a familial mix of all the above. Instead, Drake seems determined to hold on to his youth, hanging out with Lil Yachty, painting his nails, and engaging in Instagram drama in a way that should be beneath him by now. This also bleeds into the content of the album. At 37, Drake is still trying to talk tough, rapping about his allegations with Millie Bobby Brown by spitting, "Bring them jokes up to the gang, we get to really flocking," or "Send a finger to your mama in some FedEx boxes. Open up that it's jaw-dropping." Elsewhere, he dissed Rihanna and A$AP Rocky, coming across like a clingy, vindictive ex in the process. Considering how petty that is, it's hard to imagine who these kinds of bars are supposed to appeal to other than his most fervent supporters. Because while that might have seemed provocative coming out of the mouth of a 24-year-old, it feels different when it's voiced by someone in their late 30s. Left spinning his wheels and embracing his most childish urges, For All the Dogs has made it clear that he's no longer pushing the genre forward. Instead, he's simply holding his space in the genre and padding out his records with streaming-centric collaborations. And while other artists use their feature artists to build thematic albums, Drake just seems to want them on the record like collecting Pokemon cards.
When I hear the song that he has with Yeet, this sounds like a Yeet song.
Yeah,
The
it
beat
does.
is a Yeet beat. Gently with Bad Bunny, it feels like him and 40 went to Google Translate and took like a Spanish beat and then made up a couple of bars and sent it to Bad Bunny and said, "You fill in the blank."
Left without any real focus
My opinion, I agree with academics on that, because that's exactly what it sounds like.
it raises the issue of whether this album was needed in the first place.
But somebody got to ask him, Drake, why did you feel the need to drop this project? Why now? You could have taken your time. Why rush a project out now, then announce you're taking a year break? Why not push this project to the year break? You're off tour, make this a masterpiece and drop that. Is this contractual? Was it just a vibe? Like, honestly, never mind. What was the inspiration? These are things that I would love to get into the mind of Drake. I'm confused about it because it seems meaningless. And I'm confused about it because it felt like he was chasing, not leading.
Yeah, I think Drake is just trying to chill with the young people and get their audience and get their fan base where he can stay relevant. You know what I mean? What's y'all thoughts on that? Let me know in the comments, all right? Let's get it.